everyone and welcome back to the FPL Family YouTube channel. I'm Sam and today we are going to be taking a deep look into budget enablers, players that allow you to have the best FPL team you can, most premium assets that you can, and indeed the most mid-price players as you can, because these guys are cheap as chips. They offer you some great value for money, and in some seasons we see cheap players that don't really offer a lot in terms of FPL points. But these guys not only are cheap, but they also have the potential and the underlying stats to provide you with some really good FPL points, and sometimes potentially also give you a headache when it comes to starting these players, because there's going to be a lot of them that you want to play week upon week, and you might end up in a situation like I was last season. We end up benching a lot of points. I think there's enough value this time around that we could see some good benching of points, if that makes sense. So a lot of points left on the bench because other players have better fixtures or potentially look better. But these budget enablers on paper don't just look to be bench fodder. These look to be players that we could actually play week upon week. And one of those players that I'm going to start with isn't the cheapest of budget enablers, but when it comes to midfielders, you are going to be looking for somebody in that probably 6.5, maybe 5.5 bracket. And Ismaila Sarr at Watford offers just that. So he's going to cost you 6 million FPL pounds this season. And when we have a little look at Watford's opening fixtures, he only plays 2 of last season's top 10 in the first 7 game weeks. So Sarr has the potential to get some really good returns this season, and particularly in the early part of the season. He was Watford's top scorer in the Championship last season with 13 goals, also chipping in with 4 assists too. We've seen in the past that he's got Premier League pedigree and Premier League history. We know he can perform really well in the Premier League, and so I would suspect on the back of a season like he had in the Championship, we might see Ismaila Sarr coming into this season full of confidence and brimming with potential. Now, when we have a little look at his campaign and we divide it between the 2 different managers, the first 19 game weeks he got 3 goals and 2 assists. When Munoz arrived as the new manager at Watford, he had the second 23 fixtures of the season under him, and in that time he got 10 goals and 2 assists, so substantially better in terms of the output that he was providing. When we have a little think about that in terms of the shots that he had 86 shots last season, 57 of those were from inside the penalty area. Those were both team leading totals, so he was Watford's primary shot provider, if you like, from both inside and outside the box. So 86 shots on in total, and 57 of those from inside the box. He also, not only that, created 42 chances last season, which was second across the Watford team. So at 6 million is a little bit of a kind of the top end, I guess, of budget enablers. But I genuinely think that alongside like his teammate Serralto, potentially even the goalkeeper who we're going to talk about shortly, we could have a nice budget enabler in the midfield, because remember, just because he isn't 4.5 doesn't mean he can't offer us good value in terms of the budget enablement in the midfield, because those midfielders are always going to cost you slightly more. And we will look at some 4.5 million midfielders, but they will never give you the underlying stats that Sarr does. Sticking with the midfield then, and sticking at the same price point, we've got now Leeds United's permanent signing in Jack Harrison. Now, of course, Jack was on loan at Leeds last season and had a phenomenal season for them. He was the 6th top scoring midfielder across the Premier League last time out, registering 160 FPL points. He also got 8 goals and 10 assists for Leeds last time around, averaging 4.4 points per match. So he was definitely a great option. Now, when we have a little look at him in comparison to his new permanent teammate in Rafinha, who you're going to pay 0.5 more for. Harrison comes in at 6 million, Rafinha comes in at 6.5. Rafinha is already owned by over a quarter of the teams in FPL, and that will only continue to go, whereas Harrison's ownership is like 4% at the time of recording, so we haven't got a huge number of owners behind him, but the underlying stats look really good. When we consider what Leeds have got to start the season, the opening 3 fixtures don't look great, but when we get beyond that from game week 3 onwards, 6 of the next 8 weeks look really nice for them. And so I think with Harrison, what we could have here is a slightly cheaper option than Rafinha, saving you that 0.5, which might then enable you to have those more premium picks across the rest of your team. but the underlying stats look just as good as Raphinha's, and he is going to be much more of a differential for us as FPL managers than his more expensive and more highly owned teammate in Raphinha. So for me, Jack Harrison, a really nice budget enabler in that midfield position, and he's one that if I need that 0.5 out of my midfield, I'm sorely tempted to take it out of Raphinha and go with Harrison instead. Now we're going to drop down to the 4.5s when we talk about defenders, because at this price point there are some really great picks. I've already mentioned Serrato at Watford, but one of the ones that is really high up on the radar for all FPL managers in this pre-season is Wesley Fofana from Leicester City. Of course, as mentioned, 4.5 million of your FPL pounds for him. I think when we have a little look at the stats and the fixtures that Leicester have coming up, he makes a really nice pick. So Leicester played just 2 of last season's top 11 in their first 7 Premier League games. So he is a player that you could happily play week upon week. You don't necessarily need to worry about benching. And this is what I mean in terms of some benching headaches with these players, because these are players that actually you want to own in FPL, but not just because you want to enable the rest of your team, but also because these enablers could provide some really great FPL returns of their own. He is currently the most popular defender in the game, costing under £5 million, and I'm not really surprised given his stats. Last season he had 27 outings for Leicester City. In that time, he got 7 clean sheets. He also got multiple assists and he got 5 bonus points. So the underlying stats look good. 9 headed shots from set pieces from him last season. Only Vardy beat him for that in terms of the Leicester City players with 11. So he was nearly up there with Vardy. And of course, when you consider that Fofana is going to cost you 4.5 and Vardy is going to cost 10, is a substantial difference between what they're going to be charging for you in terms of FPL prices. 11 shots inside the box from Fofana last season, more than any other of the Leicester City defenders. And so when you are looking for a real lovely budget option, going to play week upon week, we would imagine, for Leicester City this season, and some attacking threat, particularly from set pieces, Fofana looks like a really nice option. Sticking with the defence then, but moving a little bit further down south to Brighton and to Lamptey. Now, for me, Tyrone Lamptey was one of the players that last season, unfortunately, ended up being a bit of a forgotten man because, of course, that injury kept him out for such a long period of time. 11 games for him last season, and in that time, 1 goal and 3 assists alongside some clean sheets also. Great fixtures for Brighton to start the season. In fact, as we've seen in a couple of previous videos, they sit top of the fixture ticker for the first 5 game weeks when you sort by defence. So the potential for clean sheets is definitely there, but the potential attacking upside is also there for Lamptey too. 30 touches in the box during the minutes that he played last season. Only Robertson could beat him in the same period of time. He also had 4 goal involvements in that period, which was the 4th best behind Robertson, Chilwell and Dean. So when we consider what he was doing in terms of the minutes that he played, had he replicated that over the course of the season, particularly after Sanchez got his regular starting position in that Brighton defence, we probably would have seen huge returns from him over the period of the 2021 season. In the second half of the season, then Brighton kept 8 clean sheets in the final 19 games. That was among the top 3 sides in that period of time. So again, their potential going at the back end of last season was really good. They also only conceded 17 goals in the same period, which was second only to Manchester City, who conceded just 13. So when we think about that and the potential then for clean sheets, it is obviously there. Now, clearly, there's a lot of chatter in the community about Ben White, and at the time of recording, Ben White is still a Brighton player. That may affect their defensive security if he does, as it looks like he is going to go to Arsenal. But I still think for clean sheet potential and also for attacking returns, you can't look much beyond Tariq Lamptey as a benching enabler. But not only benching him, you're going to want to play this kid. He looks really, really good value for money. When we have a little look at goalkeepers then, I've picked out 2. One that I've already mentioned when talking about Lamptey, of course, Robert Sanchez, 4.5 million. And the reason I've picked out these 2 are partly because of where you can save an extra bit of money on top of their own potential as FPL players. So when we have a little look at him, he played 27 games last season, got 10 assists, 8 bonus points. And from game week 13 onwards, only Edison and Mendy got more clean sheets than Sanchez did. And when you consider the price difference, that is a substantial saving that you can have from having one of the premium options. When we have a little look then at what he's got to start the season, as mentioned with Lamptey, sit top of the fixture ticker for defence for those first 5 game weeks. But they only played 2 of last season's top 9 sides in the first 8 game weeks. So the fixtures are there, his form was there from the end of last season, and his ability is clearly there with the underlying stats backing that up. The great thing about Sanchez is you compare him with Jason Steele, who's his deputy. He's coming in at 4 million now. Brighton have just signed another player, another goalkeeper. We're unsure whether he's coming in as the second or third. But if you can, and if we start to see Steele have that second jersey, then pairing them two together is lovely, because you can have 2 goalkeepers at 8.5 million who will guarantee you a starting goalkeeper. So you're going to save yourself some money. And the same can be said at Watford. So we've got Daniel Bachmann, who comes in again at 4.5 million. Pair him with Ben Foster at 4 million and you've got a guaranteed goalkeeper for just 8.5 million of your FPL pounds, which is lovely. He conceded the fewest goals in the Championship last season with 30. Also got 23 clean sheets. He originally came to Watford as the backup for Foster, but when Muniz arrived, he instated him as the number 1. And we've seen some remarkable stats from him in that final part of the season. As I've mentioned in some other videos in the past, particularly go and have a little look at the rotating pairs video, because the stats for Serralto will help us to understand why it's also a really good idea to have the goalkeeper there too. As I mentioned, pair him up with Foster and you're loving life at just 8.5 million. The fixtures are great. So I think for me, going with one of these 2 and then their deputies makes a lot of sense. And the great thing is, if you go with Bachmann, you can have Lamptey. If you go with Sanchez, you can go with one of the Watford defenders on side of him. So you're covering yourself for both of the potential for clean sheets from both of these 2 sides. Now, when we have a little look then at some of the other options that are available, I've picked out a few who offer good value for money, but don't necessarily have the same level of underlying stats. So Yves Bissouma at 4.5 million, just sticking with Brighton for a moment, 35 shots last season for him. 35 starts last season for him, so consistency is definitely there. Guaranteed points if you just want someone coming off your bench. He is a little bit more of a one that you're happy to bench every week, so at 4.5 million, great value there. He also got away 42 shots last season, 7 of those from inside the box, and did score an absolute worldie of a goal, so potential there for him to get some upside points too. Another one that I want to flag is Morgan Gibbs-White at 4.5 million. He started to come into his own at Wolves at the back part of last season. And in that period of time, he got 10 shots in the last 4 game weeks. I think he's going to be one to watch, because obviously we have a new manager coming in at Wolves. We have to see if he's going to start. So I don't think that he's going to be a budget enabler you want for the first few game weeks of the season, particularly because the Wolves fixtures look tough. However, give it 3 or 4 game weeks when most players will start thinking about wildcards. And I think Morgan Gibb-White is one that we should keep on our radar as wildcard enabling territory. Another one to have a little look at, then we're going back to Brighton again for Jacob Modder. Now, of course, he arrived back in February and made 7 league starts since then for Brighton. He included starts in those last 3 Premier League games of the previous season. So we're starting to get some more consistency then, but we do know that Potter loves to tinker around with his side. So consistency of starts might be an issue with this one, but he might be one to take a risk on, because he's more inclined to get forward than, say, Bissouma is. So it depends on how risky you want to be and how much the rest of your bench is looking solid. If you've got risky options everywhere, then going with someone like Bissouma might be a good option. But if the rest of your bench is solid and pretty much guaranteed to start, then Modder potentially could be a good option. Let's see what happens with him in pre-season if he regularly gets a start, because if he does, then at 4.5 million with the potential attacking returns that he could offer, he could be one to watch. Billy Gilmour, with his move away from Chelsea on loan to Norwich, I think offers us potentially the best value for money in the game right now when we come to looking at midfielders. 4.5 million for a player that we would imagine is regularly going to start. Oliver Skipp was there on loan last season from Spurs, but they want to keep him this season based upon the quality of season that he had last time out. So instead they've got Billy Gilmour. That suggests to me that he is going to be a regular starter. Now, of course, the underlying stats for Gilmour last season weren't great because he didn't play a lot of games for Chelsea, but he was great for Scotland, particularly in that game against England where his underlying stats looked fantastic in the Euros. So He is one that will 100% be in my FPL team come game week 1. I am absolutely certain that I can't see him going anywhere simply because of the price that he comes in at and the potential that he has, even though the Norwich fixtures aren't great going into the season. Just 2 more then before I stop this video and kind of think about something else for a little while. Nathan Tella. Now, he's one that I'm kind of interested in because this one in part is going to depend upon what happens with Danny Ings. Now, if Danny Ings goes, I think there's some potential here. If he doesn't, then I would stay away from Tella for a little while until we get a better understanding of what Hasselhouten is planning to do with his Southampton side for next season. Could be a wildcard one if Danny Ings is still there. Because he only made 72 starts last season. 72? Only made 7 starts last season and only played for 742 minutes across the season. In that time, he had 8 shots on target and did get 2 big chances. So there are some underlying stats there that look okay, and at 5 million could be an option. But if Danny Ings is staying, if Southampton continue to rotate him, which I suspect that they might if Danny Ings is still there, it might not be the best option. But if Ings does go, then maybe we have a little look at Tella, because at that price point could offer you some good options in terms of enabling the rest of your side. And the final one that I want to flag then is Jacob Murphy. He started the last 9 Premier League games of the 2021 season for Newcastle, and in that time was playing at wing back. He is, though, a midfielder in the game, so gonna come and cost you 5 million, so a little bit more expensive than some of these others. But in that time, during the course of last season, he did score 2 goals, get 3 assists, create 9 chances and 7 big chances. So the underlying stats are definitely there. If he continues to start, could be an option. But as I've mentioned already in the Newcastle deep dive, if you haven't already watched that, the legal battles and the ramifications for Newcastle in this pre-season do put me off. So he's again one that I would wait on the wild card. But if you are looking for some great budget enablers for the beginning of the season, then having a look at the ones that I mentioned in the beginning of this video, I think could be nice options. Having a look at players like Sarr, at Harrison, at Fofana, at Lamptey, and at those really nice pairings of goalkeepers that can save you that additional 0.5 and still guarantee you a regular starting goalkeeper, which is exactly what we all want. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Leave me a comment about who you think are the best budget enablers for this FPL season. And there are a couple of videos to watch if you haven't already done so. Thanks for watching, guys.